and ignorance as like the best means to go and learn.
Yeah, this kind of comes down to something we talk about occasionally about, you know, what is it, how, not only epistemologically speaking, how do we determine what is truth and knowledge and what qualifies, but also for people with religious beliefs, what justification do you have for believing in it? Is it a justification that you think should apply to everybody? For example, the people who say that, well, I know God is real because I've felt him and experienced him in my own life. Well, okay, congratulations, you have what could only be classified as a private revelation. I can't possibly assess it because I can't experience it. And when you tell me about it, that then is hearsay. It's not a revelation to me. It's hearsay to me. In order for that experience to be capable of convincing me, I would need to have that same experience. You know, this kind of private divine revelation. I would say that if knowing that you have experienced something or accepting that you have experienced something, you may in fact be justified in your belief. I have no real way of assessing that. I do, however, suspect that you're not, because of all the possible types of experiences that people would attribute to a God. Oh, I felt his presence, or I saw him, you know, I prayed and this happened, or I saw something else and I'm going to attribute it to God. If you took all of those experiences and put them together in a big chart, you'd see that people have attributed them to all different gods, which are mutually exclusive in many cases, and in some cases, those same experiences can be attained by purely, or can be experienced with no connection, real or implied, to anything supernatural. And we've discovered that people were wrong.
Right. So
if you had all this list of all the experiences that people have had that they kind of consider private revelation, a way of knowing something, a chunk of them are applied to gods, and some portion of those are wrong, and some portion of those are applied to gods that are mutually exclusive or inconsistent, contradictory. And then you've got another chunk of experiences where they've, we write those people off as schizophrenic, lock them up in asylums because they're being given messages from the aliens or from the underwear gnomes or whoever. And because it's not God who's giving them this private revelation, we're all comfortable in just locking them up. Well, yeah, you'd have to say that to be fair, we would have to treat them exactly the same as the people who claim that they're getting private revelations from angels and gods. There's no way to distinguish for an outsider between the two. The only reason that religion gets a free pass is tradition. We've grown up with these superstitions and myths, and as we begin to come out of our ignorance and the scales drop from our eyes, we have a kind of a fondness. Oh, we don't want to be too mean to people who believe something. You know, they're not really hurting anybody. Their belief in God isn't hurting anybody. I'd argue that in many cases it is. And if you continue going through those experiences and the ones where now we have scientific explanations for it, you know, people feel overwhelmed or overjoyed during certain musical numbers. Well, that's things that we can actually study. We can study how the brain functions. We can determine that, you know, certain notes resonate and produce different effects in the brain that can raise goosebumps or make you feel somewhat euphoric and other things. And the line, you know, as soon as we identify that and say, okay, this music, this particular frequency or sequence or whatever produces this kind of effect, what happens? Well, the people who used to attribute it to God still do. They just say, well, you've discovered, you know, the scientific explanation for it, but God is just working through, you know.
Well, now you've got stone soup. Yeah. Now you're in the fairy tale apologetic of stone soup, where somebody is taking something that exists purely on its own and saying that I need this other thing, that it has to, the causation is this other thing. And it's like, no, if you make a pot of soup and you throw in a bunch of vegetables and you boil it up, guess what? You made soup. And you don't need a magic rock to make soup.
Yeah.
And if somebody throws a rock in that bowl and says, you know, it's because of the rock, that's why we have soup, it's like, no, you have soup because you made soup.
Once it was a chunk of salt, and then it might make the soup a little tastier.
Yeah, or salty. Right. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like you've got there's these concepts, and the one, you know, would be the Jack and the Beanstalk, like, oh, well, I just know, I don't have a reason. It's like, well, Jack just believed that the beans were magic. Well, Jack got lucky because they were magic beans, but what are the odds that you're going to come across magic beans versus the odds that somebody's stealing your cow? Okay, so, well, seriously.
Yeah, no,
all right, so.
I mean, I tend to look at a lot of, every one of those claims like